They say the woods are beautiful by day, but at night, they don't belong to us. This is the story of three friends who thought a weekend camping trip would be an escape from the city. Instead, it became a night they would never return from. Maya, Chris, and Jordan had been friends since college. They wanted one last adventure before the new semester, so they chose Blackthorn Forest, a remote wilderness known for its endless pines and thick, suffocating quiet. Locals warned them, "Don't camp in the woods past sundown. People hear voices there. Not everyone comes back." But the three laughed it off. Superstition. Old ghost stories. Nothing more. When they arrived, the air already felt heavier. The forest loomed over them, the trees so tall they blocked most of the sky. It was almost too dark, even in the afternoon. They hiked for hours, finally setting up camp near a clearing. By dusk, they had a fire burning, and laughter filled the air. They roasted marshmallows, shared stories, and tried to shake off the unease. But even then, something was wrong. No insects. No owls. No rustling leaves. Just silence. Later that night, the first whisper came. It was faint, high-pitched, like a child giggling somewhere far off between the trees. Maya stiffened. "Did you hear that?" Chris shook his head. Probably an animal. But Jordan wasn't convinced. His flashlight swept the tree-line. That wasn't an animal. That sounded human. They listened. Nothing. Just silence again. Uneasy, they returned to the fire, but soon, the giggling returned, closer this time. And then, their names. Maya. Chris. Jordan. Each voice came from a different direction, circling the camp. They panicked, jumping up from their chairs. Their flashlights darted across the trees. That's when Jordan swore he saw movement, a tall, spindly shadow that disappeared the second his light touched it. They doused the fire and hid in their tents, whispering to each other through the thin nylon walls. But the voices didn't stop. They grew louder, clearer. Sometimes they sounded like each other. Maya calling Jordan's name, Chris calling Maya's. Other times, like children. Other times, like dozens of people whispering at once. Maya clutched her sleeping bag. "We should leave. Right now." Chris whispered back, "No. It's too dark. We'll get lost." Then came the footsteps. Heavy, dragging, circling the tents. The ground seemed to tremble with each step. Chris slowly unzipped his tent flap, aiming his flashlight. The beam hit something between the trees. At first, he thought it was a man. But its arms were too long, nearly scraping the ground. Its body was twisted, its back arched at an impossible angle. And on its head, a skull. A deer skull. Only the eye sockets weren't empty. Inside, two red orbs glowed. Chris froze. The thing tilted its head, bones cracking, and then it moved. Slowly. Toward the tent. Chris screamed for the others, and all three burst from their tents, running blindly into the woods. Branches whipped their faces. Roots caught their shoes. The forest felt alive, closing in around them. And always, behind them, the sound of bones rattling. A guttural growl. The sound of something breaking and reforming itself as it crawled. They didn't stop until Jordan tripped. He fell hard, flashlight scattering into the dark. The others turned back just in time to see the demon's jaw unhinge, wider than any mouth should open. The scream that came out wasn't Jordan's, it was hundreds of voices, all shrieking at once. And then, silence. Jordan was gone. Maya and Chris kept running, tears blinding them. Behind them, the forest groaned with unnatural sounds, branches snapping though no wind blew, voices calling their names from every direction. Finally, the trees thinned. Headlights flashed in the distance. The highway. They stumbled out of the woods, covered in dirt and blood, nearly collapsing in the path of an oncoming truck. The driver skidded to a halt, jumping out to help them. Maya screamed for help. Chris begged the driver not to go into the woods. When authorities returned the next morning, they found only the campsite. The tents shredded. the fire pit cold. And on the trees, deep claw marks forming strange symbols that no one could explain. No trace of Jordan. No body. Not even a drop of blood. To this day, campers vanish in Blackthorn Forest. Always at night. Always without a trace. Some say the demon doesn't hunt for food. It hunts for company. And when it whispers your name, it means it already knows you. You'd think surviving something like that would bring peace. But for Maya and Chris, escaping Blackthorn Forest was only the beginning. Because when you leave something behind in those woods, sometimes it follows you home. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and bleach, but Maya couldn't shake the scent of pine and smoke from her clothes. She sat in a stiff chair in the waiting room, shivering despite the warm air. Across from her, Chris stared blankly at the floor, his knuckles white from clenching his fists. They'd told the police everything, at least everything they dared. A shadow, a sound, their friend vanishing without a trace. But the truth? That thing in the woods? The deer skull, the glowing eyes, the unholy whispers? No one believed it. The officer's pen scratched against paper as he repeated the same line. People panic in the woods. They get turned around. Your friend probably ran. He'll turn up. But Maya knew better. She could still feel the weight of the forest pressing down on her. The way Jordan's scream had cut off so suddenly, like the night had swallowed him whole. Later, alone in her apartment, she crawled into bed and whispered to herself, "We made it out. We're safe." But deep down, she wasn't sure. 2 weeks passed. Life returned to routine, or at least, it tried. But the forest had followed them. Maya woke one night to the sound of scratching on her window. Long, deliberate strokes, as if something were dragging its nails down the glass. She froze, staring at the curtains. Her apartment was 3 stories high, no balcony, no fire escape, no branches close enough to reach. She pulled the curtain back just a sliver. Nothing. Just her reflection in the dark glass. But as she leaned closer, she realized the reflection wasn't hers. The eyes were wrong. Too red. Too hollow. She snapped the curtain shut and didn't sleep again that night. Meanwhile, Chris had his own encounter. Walking home from class, he kept hearing laughter behind him. High-pitched. Giggling. He spun around, but the sidewalk was empty. Streetlights flickered overhead. His footsteps echoed too loudly, as though someone else was matching them just a beat too late. Then he saw it. A tall shadow stretched across the pavement, far longer than his own, following just out of reach of the light. And when he blinked, gone. Both tried to tell themselves it was stress, trauma, hallucinations. But then came the dreams. They both dreamed of the campsite, the smoldering fire, the clawed trees, and always, Jordan's voice, calling for help. Sometimes it was faint. Sometimes it was screaming. And when they woke, their clothes smelled faintly of burned pine wood, as though the forest had found its way into their rooms. Maya couldn't let it go. She needed answers. At the library, she dug through old newspapers and microfilm. She found reports spanning decades, stories of vanished hikers, campers, even hunters. Always in Blackthorn Forest. Most were written off as accidents. But some had survivors. Their testimonies were buried, short, almost dismissed. One article from 1972 caught her eye. A survivor claimed to see a creature with a deer skull for a head, glowing eyes, and arms too long for its body. He said it whispered his name, promising to keep him forever. Days later, he vanished without a trace. Another clipping from 1991 told of a family who camped near the treeline. The children reported hearing voices calling to them at night. When their parents went to investigate, the kids were gone by morning. Maya showed Chris the stack of articles. He shoved them away. "We're just feeding it," he said, trembling. "You keep digging into this, it'll keep finding us." But Maya's eyes burned with determination. Jordan isn't gone. He's trapped. That thing took him. and I'm going to get him back. That night, Maya's phone buzzed. One new message. It was from Jordan's number. "Help me. I'm still here." Coordinates followed, the exact spot of their old campsite. Her stomach dropped. She called the number, but it went straight to voicemail. Against all reason, she packed her bag and called Chris. "I'm going back." Chris yelled at her over the phone. "Are you insane? That thing nearly killed us." Maya's voice cracked. "If it were you, I'd go back. I can't leave him there." After hours of arguing, Chris finally gave in. He couldn't let her go alone. The forest greeted them like a grave. They entered under a broken moon, flashlights slicing weak beams into the black. Every step forward felt heavier, the silence pressing tighter. Even their breathing sounded too loud. The deeper they went, the colder it became. No birds. No insects. Just the creak of ancient pines shifting in the dark. Then, the voices began. "Maya!" Cries. The sound came from everywhere and nowhere at once, wrapping around them like a noose. Chris's hand shook so badly he could barely keep the flashlight steady. "This is a mistake. We need to turn back." But Maya pressed on, her face pale, determined. "He's here. I know it." They reached the old campsite. The tents were gone. The fire pit was nothing but scattered ash. But the trees still bore the claw marks, deep, unnatural symbols that seemed to pulse in the dark. Then, from the shadows, came a sound. A low groan. A broken whisper. Jordan stumbled into the clearing. His clothes were torn. His face pale. His eyes sunken, ringed in black. "Maya!" he croaked. "It won't let me go." Maya dropped her bag and ran to him, but Chris yanked her back. "Wait. Look at him. Something's wrong." Jordan's lips moved, but his words didn't match. His voice came half a second late, as though it were echoing from somewhere else. Then his jaw cracked, unhinged. His mouth opened far too wide. His eyes filled with red light, spilling tears of blood. It wasn't Jordan. It was the demon. The forest erupted with noise, hundreds of voices screaming, crying, laughing all at once. Faces flickered in the dark between the trees, pale and twisted, their mouths frozen in endless wails. The demon didn't kill its victims. It kept them. Their voices, their faces, their memories, absorbed into the forest. Jordan's form twisted, flickering between himself and the deer skull creature, as if the demon were wearing him like a mask. And then it lunged. Chris shoved Maya backward, and both sprinted through the clearing, the ground trembling beneath their feet. The forest bent around them, trees creaking and twisting to block their path, roots writhing across the ground like snakes. Everywhere they turned, the demon was there. It didn't run, it shifted, breaking itself into new shapes, crawling closer, closer. The voices clawed at their minds, whispering lies, screams, promises. Sometimes it was Jordan's voice begging for help. Sometimes it was their own voices, taunting them. Just when Maya felt her legs would give out, she saw a faint glow, the highway through the trees. Headlights. Salvation. They burst from the tree line, stumbling onto asphalt as a car screeched to a halt. The driver leaned out, cursing, but when he saw their faces, ashen, bloodied, he leapt out to help. Maya turned back one last time. The forest was still, quiet. But deep in the shadows, two red eyes glowed, unblinking. Watching. Maya and Chris survived, again. But the demon wasn't done. Because once it knows your name, you're already part of its forest. And the forest never lets go. Some people say survival is victory. But Maya and Chris learned the hard truth. Survival is just postponement. Because the forest doesn't forget. And the demon always takes back what's his. It had been 3 months since Maya and Chris escaped Blackthorn Forest for the second time. To the outside world, life had returned to normal. Maya was back in her apartment, pretending to study, though her textbooks sat untouched. Chris went to class, smiled when people spoke to him, even laughed at jokes. But both of them knew it was a performance. Because the whispers hadn't stopped. At first, it was faint. A child's giggle on a quiet street. A faint scratching against the wall when no one else was home. Shadows that seemed longer than they should be. But as weeks passed, the demon grew bolder. Maya would wake at night to find her curtains swaying as though someone had just moved past them. Chris swore he saw Jordan's reflection in the bathroom mirror, standing right behind him, even though the room was empty. The worst was the phone calls. Maya's phone would ring in the dead of night, Jordan's name flashing across the screen. Every time she answered, there was silence, until finally, one night, she heard him. "Maya, help me." His voice cracked, weak, as though coming from miles away. Then the line dissolved into guttural growls and the sound of bones breaking. She dropped the phone, her body trembling. Chris tried to convince her it wasn't real. But the terror in his eyes betrayed him. He was hearing the same things. And then, the disappearances began. On campus, 3 students went missing after a weekend hiking trip. 2 weeks later, a family vanished while driving near the edge of Blackthorn Forest, their car abandoned by the roadside, doors open, belongings scattered. Maya clipped every article, circling them in red ink. "It's spreading," she whispered to Chris. "It's not just in the woods anymore." Chris shook his head. "No. It's still the forest. It's reaching out, pulling people in." Maya's hands trembled as she shoved the clippings across the table. "Don't you see? It wants us. Jordan wasn't enough. It's not going to stop until it takes us back." Chris slammed his fist against the table. "Then what do you want me to do, Maya? March back into hell and fight it? We barely made it out alive, twice." But the answer came soon enough. One night, they shared the same dream. They stood in the clearing of the old campsite. The fire burned low. The clawed trees surrounded them, pulsing like open wounds. And in the center stood Jordan, pale and broken, his mouth opening wider and wider until his jaw split, and the deer skull slid over his face. The demon pointed at them with its twisted arms. And the entire forest screamed. When Maya woke, she was no longer in her apartment. She was in the woods. She shot upright, gasping, the pine needles cold beneath her hands. The fire pit was there, smoldering. The claw marks etched into the trees. And beside her, Chris, also waking in terror. It hadn't been a dream. The forest had pulled them back. They tried to retrace their steps, but the forest was no longer the same. Paths twisted back on themselves. Trees shifted when they weren't looking, their trunks creaking as though they were alive. Hours passed, at least, they thought it was hours. The moon never moved. The air grew colder, thicker, until it felt like breathing smoke. And always, the whispers. "Maya! Cries! Stay with us!" Faces appeared in the bark of the trees, mouths open in silent screams. Some they recognized. Some were strangers. But all of them were trapped, their eyes begging for release. Finally, they stumbled into a clearing they had never seen before. At its center was a massive pine tree, its trunk blackened and split open like a wound. Carved into its bark were hundreds of clawed symbols, pulsing faintly with red light. And nailed into the tree with bone stakes were fragments of belongings, shoes, scraps of clothing, broken watches. Jordan's backpack hung there, torn and bloodied. Maya fell to her knees, sobbing. "He's here. He's still here." Chris pulled her back. "No. Don't touch it." But it was too late. The ground trembled. The tree split wider. And from its hollow stepped the demon. It was taller than before, its arms dragging in the dirt, its deer skull cracked and stained dark. Red light bled from its sockets, spilling across the ground. The voices came not from its mouth but from all around them, hundreds at once. Jordan's. Children's. Their own. We keep what is ours. The forest is hungry. You cannot leave. The demon stretched one claw toward Maya. Jordan's voice rose above the others. "Maya, stay with me. Join me. It's not so bad." Her heart broke. She wanted to run to him, to believe he was still in there. But Chris pulled her back. "Don't listen. It's not him anymore." The demon tilted its head, bones snapping. Then its voices shifted, mocking. "Chris, you left him. You let him fall. You ran while he screamed." Chris's face crumpled in guilt. He fell to his knees, clutching his head. "Stop it, stop." The forest screamed louder, the voices clawing at their minds. Maya grabbed Chris's arm. "We have to fight it. It keeps them here because no one fights back." They scrambled through their bags, finding only a small hatchet, a lighter, and matches. Maya's eyes locked on the blackened tree. "It's the heart. That's where it keeps them." Chris hesitated. "If we're wrong, then we die anyway," Maya snapped. As the demon advanced, they lit branches, creating torches. The forest shrieked as flames licked the clearing. Shadows twisted violently, faces screaming from the bark. The demon lunged, swiping its claws, sending Chris crashing into the dirt. Maya swung her torch, the fire searing across its arm. The creature shrieked, a sound that rattled her bones, but didn't stop. Chris staggered to his feet, grabbing the hatchet. He sprinted toward the blackened tree and drove the blade into its trunk. Red light sprayed like blood. The faces in the bark screamed louder, their mouths splitting open. The demon roared, its skull cracking down the middle, its body thrashing violently. Maya threw her torch into the hollow of the tree. Flames erupted, climbing fast, devouring the symbols, the belongings, the very heart of the forest. The ground shook violently. Trees bent and snapped. The demon shrieked, lunging at Maya, just as Chris tackled it, both of them crashing into the fire. Maya screamed his name, but the blaze consumed them both. When Maya woke, she was lying on the roadside. Dawn was breaking. Her body ached, her clothes were singed, but she was alive. The forest behind her smoldered, smoke curling into the pale sky. Blackthorn Forest burned, flames devouring the endless pines. But Chris was gone. Only the hatchet remained, lying blackened at the tree lean. She crawled to her knees, tears streaming down her face. She wanted to believe he had freed them all. That Jordan, Chris, and the countless voices were finally at peace. But as the smoke thickened, she swore she heard it, faint, beneath the crackle of fire. Her name, Maya. The forest burns. The demon sleeps. But it is never gone. Because Blackthorn is not just a place. It is hunger. It is memory. It is forever. And once it knows your name, you belong to it. If this story kept you looking over your shoulder, hit like, tap subscribe for more chilling tales every week, and tell me in the comments what horror you'd dare to face.